I was 55 years old. I was bent over, scrubbing dried vomit in the restroom of a gas station. As the heavy smell of detergent burned my nostrils, a lawyer in a very expensive suit walked in. "Are you Roderick Fulton?" he asked, his voice echoing off the tile walls. When I straightened up and nodded, he handed me an envelope. An envelope that would explain why my uncle had left me $340 million, and why my father had lied to me for 40 years. My name is Roderick Fulton, and until that Tuesday, I was nobody. A failed warehouse supervisor, a man abandoned by his ex-wife, who had run off with his richer cousin. I was a minimum wage cleaner at the Texaco station off Highway 65. My ex-wife, Melody, had said as she left the house with her heels clicking on the pavement, "You're going to die cleaning toilets." She was partly right. I was cleaning toilets, but I wasn't dead yet. The lawyer stood there, immaculate in his suit, looking as if he'd taken a wrong turn on his way to a board meeting. "Harrison Blackwell," he said, giving his name and stating he was from a law firm in Houston, a name I'd never heard. He kept looking at his solid gold watch. He clearly had somewhere more important to be. People like him usually only spoke to people like me when someone was being arrested or sued. "Your uncle, Cornelius Fulton, passed away 2 weeks ago," he said, pulling some documents from a file. Uncle Cornelius, the mysterious uncle my father, Wallace, never spoke about. He had supposedly made his money and moved to Texas before I was born. I think I'd seen him maybe twice in my life, and we never spoke. "You are the sole heir to the estate," Blackwell continued. 3 oil refineries, numerous wells, real estate, and various investments totaling approximately $340 million. The industrial toilet brush slipped from my hand and clattered into the porcelain. I instantly dropped to the floor. $340 million. Those words echoed in my head, dollars spinning constantly, like on a slot machine. I slammed down onto the closed toilet lid, not caring that the bleach water was staining my trousers. "And this," Blackwell said, producing a yellowed envelope with my name scrawled across it in shaky handwriting. "He specifically requested that you read this alone after learning about the inheritance. It said precisely, 'Tell Roderick that this letter holds the truth I've carried for 40 years, and that his father's lies were actually born of love.'" My fingers trembled as I took the envelope. The fluorescent light behind me buzzed and flickered, casting hard shadows on the cracked linoleum floor. At the far end of the station, I could hear my boss, Trevor, arguing with a customer over expired coupons. He would probably be in here in 2 minutes to yell at me for taking too long in the restroom. But he didn't know yet that the man he'd looked down upon for 2 years was now wealthier than the entire town. Yet, the tightness in my chest wasn't because of the money. It was that last sentence, the one about my father. Wallace Fulton was 78, living in a historical nursing home, still wearing the same Detroit Tigers cap he'd worn since 1987. What lies had he told me? What truth had Uncle Cornelius hidden all these years? "Mr. Fulton." Blackwell's voice pulled me back to the present. "There's a car waiting for you outside. There are documents to sign, properties to see, executives waiting for you in Houston. The life you knew is over." I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Gray stubble, tired eyes, a face crushed by the weight of years. Melody had been right about one thing. This version of me really was going to die. But not the way not defeated and forgotten in a gas station restroom. I stood up, pulled off my rubber gloves one last time, and followed Harrison Blackwell out of the restroom, leaving behind the bucket, the mop, and the man who no longer expected any surprises in life. The envelope in my pocket felt heavier than the millions it represented. Whatever truths about my family, whatever secrets buried for 40 years were inside. I needed to know them all. The January morning was cold and bright. Vapor trailed from our breaths as we walked toward Blackwell's Lincoln Town car. Trevor came running out after me, yelling that I was abandoning my shift. I didn't even turn around. I had an uncle to bury, a fortune to claim, and a few of my father's lies to untangle. The gas station restroom could keep its stains. I had bigger messes to clean up now. Life hadn't always been this wretched. 3 years ago, I was Roderick Fulton, a warehouse manager at Midwest Distribution, making $58,000 a year, living with my wife Melody in a 4-bedroom colonial in the Indianapolis suburbs. We had been married for 28 years. We were both 24, and we believed love could conquer everything. Back then, I thought everything was going right. A steady job, a mortgage paid on time, a wife who still occasionally laughed at my jokes, and Sunday dinners with my father when his health allowed. The warehouse job wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. I managed a crew of 30, most of them young guys who called me Mr. Pfeff, and would knock on my door for advice on everything from forklifts to divorces. I knew every corner of the warehouse, every supplier's schedule, every route needed to keep things running smoothly. My boss used to say, "You could run this place blindfolded." Then, on a Thursday afternoon in March, that email arrived. They called it restructuring. In corporate speak, it meant, "We found someone cheaper." They offered me 2 weeks severance for every year of service. It sounded generous, but nobody wanted to hire a 52-year-old warehouse supervisor with a bad back and no college degree. The younger guys I trained could do my job for half the pay, and they had computer skills I'd never bothered to learn. I was still hopeful during the first month of unemployment. I updated my resume, looked at job postings, and contacted old work friends. Something will come through, I told Melody every morning at breakfast. I have experience that has to count for something. By the 3rd month, the savings account was bleeding out. The mortgage, car payments, insurance, groceries, everything demanded money. But nothing was coming in. First, I applied for jobs below my qualifications, then for ones that matched, and finally, for anything that would take me. Every rejection email was the same. "We've decided to go in a different direction," meaning, "You're rejected." That's when my cousin Dexter started showing up. Successful Dexter. With his perfect teeth, the Rolex on his wrist, and his chain of luxury car dealerships across Indiana. He'd married money first, then multiplied it. "Just visiting my favorite cousin," he'd say. The wine he brought cost more than my weekly salary. He'd talk about trips to Cabo or Monaco, as if discussing the weather. Melody's face would light up when his Mercedes turned the end of the drive. She'd put on makeup, wear her nice dress, and laugh a little too hard at country club gossip. When I complained, she'd say, "Dexter's just trying to help. Maybe he can get you a job at one of his dealerships." The mere thought of working for my arrogant cousin made my stomach turn. But by the 6th month of unemployment, pride was a luxury. I asked him for a job. He laughed and slapped my shoulder. "Roderick, my friend, I wish I could help, but you don't have the killer instinct for sales, you know." In the 8th month, we entered foreclosure. That same week, Melody also started working late, coming home with bags from stores I couldn't afford, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. "Look at yourself, Roderick," she said, arms crossed in the bedroom doorway. "You sit on that couch all day sending out resumes nobody reads. You've given up. Dexter treats me the way I deserve to be treated. He takes me to nice restaurants, not McDonald's with a coupon." A week later, she moved in with Dexter. The divorce papers arrived a month after that. We didn't divide anything of value. The last thing she said to me was, "One day you'll die cleaning toilets. Remember that. It's the only useful thing you are now." 2 years later, I was doing exactly that at the Texaco station, starting at 4 a.m. for $9.5 an hour. The toilets were like crime scenes, the floors sticky with unidentifiable substances, and I was restocking energy drinks for truckers, most of whom were completely unaware of my existence. My boss, Trevor, was 28, a recent graduate who treated his two-year business degree like it was a certificate from Steve Jobs. He loved constantly telling me, "There are plenty of people to replace you." My apartment was the studio above the Chinese restaurant. Wong's kitchen, 500 square feet stained carpet, windows that wouldn't quite close. I lived perpetually with the smell of meat and broccoli. My wardrobe had shrunk to 5 gas station uniforms and 2 pairs of jeans. My father called every Sunday from the nursing home. Every time, I lied. What could I say? That his son had become the very thing he spent years trying to protect him from. This was who I was when Harrison Blackwell walked into the restroom that morning. A living example of middle-aged failure. A man who had lost everything and chosen merely to survive, not to live. That Tuesday morning had started routinely. I was trying to scrub out a particularly bad stain with a pumice stone when I heard the click of expensive shoes on the tile behind me. When you work at a gas station, you learn to distinguish sounds. Roderick Fulton? When I turned around, I saw a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a law firm advertisement. His gray hair was impeccably combed, his teeth brilliantly white. The suit he wore cost more than I earned in 3 months. His shoes were shiny black leather, yet somehow clean despite having traversed our parking lot, a lot that hadn't seen a proper cleaning since Obama's first term. "That's me," I said, peeling off my rubber gloves, trying to hide the squalor inside me. "I'm Harrison Blackwell, from Blackwell Sterling and Associates in Houston, Texas. I need to speak with you about your uncle, Cornelius Fulton." Uncle Cornelius. The name chilled my face. I barely remembered the man existed. He was my father's older brother, who had moved to Texas before I was born. There had been a family feud no one ever discussed. I had asked my father a few times, and he would just shake his head and say, "That man chose money over family," ending the conversation. "He passed away 2 weeks ago," the lawyer said, his tone professional yet soft. "You are named in his will." I almost laughed. The sound started in my chest but died before it reached my lips. "Mr. Blackwell, I think you have the wrong person. I make my living cleaning gas station toilets. I had no relationship with my uncle. I've probably seen him twice in my entire life. He has nothing to leave me that's worth the cost of you flying here from Houston." Blackwell opened his leather briefcase with precision and pulled out a thick file full of documents. "Mr. Fulton, your uncle was the owner of the Fulton Energy Corporation. He owned 3 oil refineries in Texas, numerous active wells in the Gulf Coast region, commercial real estate in Houston and Dallas, and a substantial investment portfolio. The total worth is approximately $340 million. The pumice stone in my hand dropped to the floor. My legs felt unstable. "That's impossible," I said, clutching the edge of the sink, trying to remain standing. "There must be another Roderick Fulton. Double check your papers." Date of birth, the 15th of October, 1969. Father, Wallace Fulton, retired auto mechanic. Former address, 4427 Maple Street, Indianapolis. Current address above Wong's Chinese Kitchen, Unit 411B. Every detail was a blow. This man knew more about me than some of my old friends. I sank heavily onto the toilet lid, no longer caring how I looked to this man in the expensive suit. "Why?" I whispered. "We didn't even know each other. My father hadn't spoken to him in 40 years. Your uncle followed your life closely, Mr. Fulton. He received regular reports. He knew you were laid off. He knew about your divorce. And he knew your current situation." Blackwell produced another document. "There is also a small bequest made out to Melody Fulton. My research indicates she was your ex-wife, which struck me as odd." "She left me 2 years ago for my cousin, Dexter," I said through gritted teeth. "What did he leave her?" A faint smile flickered across Blackwell's professional expression. $1, the note reads. So she knows I knew what kind of woman she was. I couldn't help myself. I let out a genuine laugh for the first time in months. Even in death, an uncle I barely knew had managed to leave the woman who ruined me with the perfect insult. There is one more thing, Blackwell said, pulling out a yellowed envelope sealed with old-fashioned wax. My name was scrawled on it in shaky handwriting. Your uncle left a specific instruction. You are to read this letter alone after learning about the inheritance it contains, and I quote, "the truth about why I stayed away, and why Wallace made the decisions he did." Just then Trevor burst in, his face bright red, clearly furious. "Rodri, what the hell are you doing? Customers are complaining about the restrooms, and you're socializing in here." He stopped abruptly when he saw Blackwell's expensive suit and briefcase. "Who is this?" "My lawyer," I said, surprised by my own voice. Effective immediately, I quit. Trevor let out a nasty, echoing laugh. "Your lawyer, huh? I'm the CEO of Microsoft. You can't quit without 2 weeks' notice. It's in your contract." Blackwell stepped forward and took out his business card. "Actually, Mr. Fulton can leave immediately. Our firm will gladly handle all legal matters concerning his employment contract." He then turned to me, "Mr. Fulton, a car is waiting for you outside. A private jet is scheduled to leave for Houston in under 2 hours. There are documents to sign and executives waiting for you." Trevor's mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no sound came out. I ripped off my uniform shirt right there, dropped it on the wet floor, and walked past him in my undershirt. "The mop is by the corner," I said as I passed. "That stain is tough. You might need to finish it." I walked out of that gas station restroom with Harrison Blackwell. Trevor remained frozen, mouth agape, watching us go. The morning customers stared at me, walking out in my undershirt, followed by a lawyer who looked like he'd walked off a Wall Street trading floor. I didn't care. For the first time in 3 years, I truly didn't care. The waiting Lincoln Town car gleamed in its flawless black. The windows were tinted dark. The driver, wearing white gloves, opened the door as if I were important. I sank into the leather seats. They were softer than the couch in my apartment. Blackwell sat beside me, placing his briefcase on his lap and tapping away on his phone. "We'll stop by your apartment to pick up your things," he said. "The jet leaves from Indianapolis Regional Airport at noon. I've arranged someone to handle the lease termination and moving arrangements." This is really happening," I said, more to myself. "Mr. Fulton," Blackwell said, turning to me with a serious expression, "in about 4 hours, you will be one of the wealthiest men in Texas. Yes, this is really happening." Knowing I was leaving the apartment forever made it look even shabbier. I stuffed my clothes into a garbage bag, grabbed the picture of my father from the dresser, and picked up the shoebox where I kept important papers. Everything I owned fit into 3 bags. My entire life for the last 3 years had been reduced to what could fit in a carry-on. The private jet was another kind of shock. I'd never even flown first class, let alone had a plane entirely to myself. The flight attendant addressed me as Mr. Fulton and treated me as if I belonged there, without even looking at me. Blackwell spread the documents out on a table that looked like it cost more than my annual salary. "Your uncle's main refinery employs 400 people," he explained as we flew south. "The foreman, Duke Morrison, has been running operations for the last month. He's expecting you, and there are 2 smaller refineries, one in Corpus Christi and the other in Beaumont." "I know nothing about refineries," I admitted honestly. "I supervised a warehouse. This is completely different." "Your uncle left detailed instructions about keeping your existing management in place," he wrote. "Roderick will be smart enough to listen to people who know more than he does. That's how he'll succeed where they would fail." When we landed in Houston, another car was waiting for us. The drive to the refinery took an hour across the flat Texas landscape, dotted with pump jacks and industrial buildings. My stomach twisted when I saw the sign at the entrance, Fulton Energy Corporation. It was surreal to see my last name written on something so massive. Duke Morrison was exactly what you'd expect from a Texas refinery foreman. 6'5", built like he wrestled bulls as a hobby, hands strong enough to crack walnuts, and a mustache straight out of a cowboy film. He looked at me with suspicion as I stepped out of the car. "So, you're Cornelius's nephew," he stated, not offering a hand. "No offense, Mr. Fulton, but what do you know about running an oil refinery?" "Nothing," I admitted honestly. "But I know how to learn. I know how to listen to people who know more than me. I also know what work is. 2 days ago, I was scrubbing toilets for minimum wage. I'm not going to claim I know your job better than you do." Those words seemed to earn a degree of respect. He finally extended his hand and shook mine with a grip that nearly crushed my fingers. "Your uncle said you'd say something like that. Come on, I'll show you around." The refinery was a city of steel and pipes. Towers reached for the sky, machines hummed constantly. Workers in hard hats and reflective vests moved with a purposeful order, checking gauges, adjusting valves, watching screens in the control room. Duke introduced me to the superintendents, the engineers, the security chief. Each one sized me up, weighing whether the new boss would mess things up. "Your uncle built this place from scratch," he said, looking down over the main processing unit. "He started by buying a small bankrupt refinery back in '82. The man worked 18 hours a day. He knew every employee's name, every pipe's location. He never married, had no children. This business was his family." As evening fell, Blackwell drove me to the residence. Mansion was a better word. 15 bedrooms, 12 baths, sitting on 50 acres outside Houston. The driveway alone was the size of my entire old neighborhood. Stepping inside felt like walking onto a museum set. Everything was perfectly preserved, but empty, like scenery for a stage whose actors never arrived. Mr. Cornelius lived here alone for the last 20 years. The housekeeper, Maria, told us he had staff during the day, but he was always alone at night. I called my father from Cornelius's study, a room packed with books and oil industry awards. He picked up after the phone rang 4 times. "Dad, it's me. I need to tell you something about Uncle Cornelius." There was a pause. I heard, "He passed away." I haven't spoken to him in 40 years, but I heard. "Dad, he left me everything. $340 million, the refineries, the investments, all of it." The silence stretched so long I checked if the line had dropped. "Good," he finally said, his voice strange and strained. "That's good, son. That's what he should have done." "Dad, what happened between you two? Why did we never see him? Why did he leave all this to me?" "Read the letter," my father said quietly. "He promised me he would write everything down for you before he died. Just promise me one thing, Roderick. Whatever that letter says, don't forget this. I did what I thought was right for you." That night, in Cornelius's study, I poured a glass of his 30-year, old bourbon, and finally opened the sealed envelope. The paper inside was fine, ivory, colored, with a watermark I didn't recognize. The writing was shaky but legible, as if he had fought his trembling hands to make every word clear. I set down my drink and began to read. "My dearest Roderick, if you are reading this, then I am dead. And you are likely wondering why I left everything to a nephew I barely knew. The truth is, I watched you from afar my entire life. Because your father and I decided that was for the best. Now what I am about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about our family." My hands were already shaking. I took another sip of bourbon and continued reading. 40 years ago, I didn't choose money over family, as Wallace told you. I chose to take on something to protect it, him and you. Your father and I were in love with the same woman. Your mother, Grace, beautiful, intelligent, and a woman who could make a man feel like a king. Wallace met her first in a dance hall in Detroit. I met her 2 weeks later when he brought her home for Sunday dinner. The moment I saw her, I understood why my brother was captivated. I remembered the photos of my mother, the woman I lost when I was 15. Beautiful wasn't a strong enough word. She had the kind of looks that made people stop and stare on the street. I tried to stay away, Rodri, Cornelius had written. I moved to Houston, worked the oil fields, sent letters instead of visiting, but Grace started writing to me. Secret letters that made my hands shake. She said she had chosen the wrong brother. That Wallace was too safe, too predictable. She thought she found a life of adventure and excitement in me. I burned all the letters, never replying to a single one. I set my bourbon glass down on the desk, my hand trembling. By the time you were 5, I had made my first serious money. I bought a bankrupt refinery and turned it profitable within a year. That's when Grace came to Houston. She walked into my office wearing a red dress, filling the room with her perfume. She said she was going to leave Wallace, that she had made a mistake, and that she wanted to be with me. She said she would bring you with her. I stopped reading for a moment. It tore me up to know that the woman my father had mourned for 25 years had been trying to seduce his brother. I said no to her, Rodri, it read. I told her Wallace was a better man, that he would be a better father, that he truly loved her, and I realized I only wanted to possess her. Grace didn't take the rejection well. She threatened to tell Wallace that we had been having a secret affair for years. It was a complete lie, but it would destroy him. She said she would use it in the divorce, that she would take you from him, and he would never see you again. When she didn't get what she wanted, she could be cruel. My chest tightened, but I kept reading. So I made a deal with her. She would leave Texas, go back to Michigan, and we would stage a fake fight with Wallace. I would look like the one who chose money over family. I made him hate me so he would never suspect the truth. In return, I would send Grace $5,000 every month to keep silent and stay married to Wallace. Grace accepted without hesitation. For 10 years. $5,000 a month. That's $600,000 total. My uncle had paid that much so that my mother wouldn't destroy my father. Your father never knew about the payments. He just assumed that I returned home for Thanksgiving, that we had a big fight, and that money had blinded me. I swore I would never return. It was all an act. But Wallace believed it. Because he had to believe it. The alternative, the truth, would have destroyed him. I pictured my father, still in that nursing home smelling of antiseptic, secretly carrying a picture of my mother. I watched you grow up from a distance, Roderick. At every school play, every baseball game, every graduation, I was there in the back row where no one would notice. I saw that you were a good man, hard-working, honest. You looked like your father. Watching you struggle was killing me, but I had to keep my word. I almost broke it when the company downsized. I held back when your house was about to be taken. Tears were now streaming down my face, and I didn't bother wiping them away. I watched you marry Melody, and in that moment, I understood that she was just like your mother, beautiful, attractive, but hollow. She was a woman who measured affection in dollars. I wanted to warn you, but what could I say without revealing everything? So, I just watched. I saw how that game ended too. The moment your bank account went dry, I watched her leave you for your cousin. History was repeating itself. The next paragraph was written in darker ink. It was as if he had pressed the pen harder into the paper. When I learned I had cancer last year, I knew my time was up. I instructed Duke to keep the refineries running. I told Blackwell to investigate everything about your life, and I prepared this inheritance. This money isn't just an inheritance, Roderick. It is 40 years of apology for every year I couldn't be there, for letting you struggle when I could have helped. for choosing your father's peace over your well-being. The final paragraph was almost illegible. His handwriting had deteriorated badly. Do not tell Wallace the truth. Let him remember things the way he needed to. Some lies, son, are acts of mercy. But know this, everything I built was always for you. Every dollar I earned, every success I achieved, it was all for my nephew, whom I loved like my own son but could never name. That $1.2 I left Melody? A small act of spite, I admit. But I'm dead now, and I deserve a little indulgence. Let her drown in that money. Use this fortune wisely. Trust Duke at the refinery, look after your father, and know that Uncle Cornelius loved you every day, even from a distance. The letter fell from my hand onto the desk. 40 years of deception, sacrifice, and love that looked like abandonment. My uncle had given up his family to save them. My mother had taken money to stay in a marriage she wanted to leave. My father had lived with a kinder lie than the pain of the truth, and I was the ignorant beneficiary, unaware of any of it. I sat in that study for 3 hours after reading the letter, watching the Texas sun set over the plains from windows that had witnessed my uncle's solitude for 40 years. Then, I called my father. You knew, I said when he answered the phone. You knew about the letter. Not what was in it, he replied softly. Cornelius called me a week before he died. He said he was going to explain everything to you in a letter. He said you would understand why things happened the way they did. Dad, I have to ask you something. And I need you to be— Are you happy with your memories of Mom? There was a long silence. She gave me you, son. No matter what, no matter who. She gave me you. That is the greatest happiness a man can find in a lifetime. I'm moving you to Houston, I said. There's a place there called Autumn Gardens. A place with real gardens, Dad. There are tomato plants you can grow yourself. An apartment with your own kitchen. And nurses who genuinely care about their patients. No more sharing a room with strangers. Roderick, I can't afford that kind of place. I can, Uncle Cornelius arranged everything, so I could take care of you the way you deserve. 3 weeks later, I moved my father to Houston. He cried when he first saw his new apartment. It wasn't tears of sorrow, but the tears of a man whose dignity had been restored. He has tomato plants now, and a nurse named Betty who brings him homemade cookies and laughs at his bad jokes. They play cards every Thursday. I haven't seen him this happy in years. When the news of the inheritance broke, Melody called me 17 times. Her messages shifted from sweet to desperate, then to angry. We can fix our relationship, one said. Remember the good times, said another. The last one was just a string of curses. Dexter left her 2 days later after learning he was explicitly excluded from the will. Apparently, keeping a woman who was publicly dumped by a $340 million inheritance wasn't good for his image. She's living with her sister now, working as a receptionist at a dental clinic in Fort Wayne. I don't wish her ill, but I don't wish her well either. Some people are just lessons disguised as lovers. I kept the refineries, but sold the mansion. I bought a modest 4-bedroom house 10 minutes from the main plant, not luxury, but comfortable. A home where I don't worry about scratching the marble by walking around in my socks. Duke runs the refinery operations. I focus on what I'm good at, helping people who have fallen to the ground. We established the Cornelius Fulton Foundation 6 months ago. We retrain people over 50 who have lost their jobs. We give them real skills that pay, not outdated advice. Welding, electrical work, HVAC systems. Jobs that genuinely earn money. So far, we've placed 200 people. At every graduation ceremony, I tell my own story, the gas station, that bathroom, the lawyer in the expensive suit. They need to know that honor can be reclaimed. Life can still surprise you, even when you've stopped believing in it. My old boss, Trevor, applied for a job at one of the refineries. I hired him. At the bottom rung. His supervisor is Nancy Chen, a 58-year-old marketing executive who lost her job during a downsizing. She graduated from our program. She's teaching Trevor that respect isn't about age or status. It's about recognizing the value in people. He's also learning humility while learning how to process petroleum. Last week, he apologized for how he treated me. "That's fine," I said. "Every Sunday I have lunch with my father in Dallas. We don't talk about Uncle Cornelius or my mother. We talk about the Cowboys' chances this season, or the tomato plants he grows that produce more tomatoes than the staff distributes. Betty comes sometimes too. This is enough. Some truths are too heavy for old men who have earned their peace." Last month, while walking through the refinery, Duke stopped me. "You know," he said, watching the workers walk toward their families at the end of their shift, "your uncle would have been proud of you. You didn't let the money change you." "It did change me," I said. "It just didn't corrupt me. That's the difference. I still clean a toilet once a month at the Foundation's training center, not because I have to, but so I never forget what it feels like to be invisible. The participants see me, the owner, kneeling on the floor, scrubbing the commode, and they understand. Honor isn't in what you do. It's in remembering that everyone deserves respect. The truth about family is this: bloodline doesn't define it. Money doesn't measure worth. And sometimes, the people who love you the most do it from a distance. Uncle Cornelius taught me that. He dedicated 40 years to building an empire. Not for himself, but for a nephew he couldn't claim. He stayed alone so my father could live with a beautiful lie. He carried his secret to the grave until it could harm no one. I keep his letter in a bank vault. Next to it are my divorce papers and my final paycheck from the gas station. 3 documents. They tell the story of where I was, where I am, and the bridge between them. A bridge built by a man I never knew. Melody was wrong about one thing. I didn't die cleaning toilets. Quite the opposite. That morning, when that lawyer walked into the gas station bathroom, I was reborn with a $340 million apology. Sometimes I still drive past that Texaco station. It's still there, still needs paint, still selling overpriced coffee to truckers. Now, someone else is cleaning the restrooms. Another middle-aged man trying to hold on to his dignity. One day, I stopped and gave him my card. I told him about the foundation. He looked at me like I was crazy. A guy with a nice truck talking about second chances.